morning here at the Political Bouillon. Today we're sitting down with our very special guest. I'm here with Professor Forte, Department of Anthropology at Concordia University. First, I'd like to thank you for sitting down with us today.
And thank you very much for having me.
It's our pleasure. Professor Forte recently wrote an article, and it's available on the Political Bouillon website. We're here to talk about his article and gain some insight into Libya, the recent controversial NATO intervention. But the first question I'd like to ask you actually pertains to Syria, and I think it's on everybody's mind now. Recent figures show the deaths of about 60,000 people right now, but yet we don't see any NATO mission there. How would you explain this, and why were threats in Libya taken more seriously?
That's a very difficult question, in fact, because early on, over a year ago, there were already calls for intervention issuing, especially from France and others, and from the first moments, the NATO Secretary General, various U.S. officials said that an intervention in Syria was out of the question because it presented a totally different military challenge than Libya. Far better equipped, far more sophisticated air defenses, very different sort of demographics and terrain and so on, and it would not be, how do I put it, not as easy, but the military operations could not be facilitated the way they were.
Okay, and my other question is actually about the NATO mission, which you talk about in your article. And you say Canadians, like other NATO member state nations, we sort of had the wool pulled over our eyes in terms of the NATO intervention, what led to it. Rumors of raising of Benghazi, mass rape and attacks against unarmed civilians. So what then would you think would be the real intentions of the NATO mission?
There were several. First of all, Gaddafi has been a long-standing adversary of the United States in Africa. Mm-hmm. Much more so now than ever before, much more so in recent years. With the so-called opening to the world, the end of sanctions, acquiring vast amounts of wealth which were being invested in various projects to integrate Africa and to move African nations away from relations of dependence on the United States and Western Europe, investing in Africa, working on possible collective self-defense in Africa. So there has been, and as I said before, Gaddafi has been possibly the most demonized foreign leader in the United States. Yeah. Even longer than Saddam Hussein or any of the others. So it was a convenient moment to finally remove him.
And do you think that the NATO mission worsened the civil war?
Well, there were signs and very clear signs that that civil war, certainly the armed conflict, the local armed conflict, would be coming to an end by the end of March 2011 without foreign intervention, simply because the opposition, the armed opposition, was losing city after city. And they had basically come down to their two sort of hotbeds of support in Benghazi and Misrata. Okay. So it's not likely that the armed opposition could have survived without NATO intervention. There's very little evidence to suggest that.
One of the key struggles, actually, in post-Gaddafi Libya has been these unarmed militias around the country, and of course their free flow of assault rifles. Do you think this is going to be a problem that's going to really impede stability for the future government?
Yes, especially because the paradox that exists now is that the new state that's being formed is dependent for its security on the very sources of instability.
So a catch-22, if you will.
Exactly.